Hi, I'm Chaos Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with writer and creator Mark Maia, here to promote issues 3 and 4 of his comic series, So-Called Living, now on Kickstarter until October 31st, Halloween.
Mhm.
Welcome back, Mark.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on. I had a good time last time we chatted. I rewatched the video recently that of our interview, so that
And
was fun.
how did it hold up?
I think it held up. I liked it. I thought it was a good chat that we had. I think the part I was at first I was scrolling by, and the first one I went on, and I was listening to a chunk, and we weren't actually talking about comic books. I can't remember what we were talking about, but I was like, we actually did talk about the comic book, right? So then I watched them. I was like, okay, we did. There was a good chunk where we did. I was just like the one random part that I picked was just it was not there was no comic book talking, but it was good. No, I have fond memories of our last encounter.
That's good. So, outside my introduction, who is Mark Maya in his own words?
Mark Maya is a creative person that just likes to produce things that people enjoy. That's the shortest I could put it in there. Because
Okay,
I do video games. I do like YouTube. I have a YouTube channel for board games. So here. Let me give this. Sorry, I also just came off a cold, so got a bit of leftover in there. But okay, so here it is. I, as a kid, played a lot of video games, loved it. And then I worked. Then I got into the video game industry. I also played a lot of board games, so then I got into the board game media industry, and then I always loved comic books, and now I'm getting into the comic book industry. So I'm very much like I really dive into what I do or what I like to do. So everything I surround myself with is things that I enjoy. So like I like board games, comic books, video games. So my work is board games, comic books, and video games. So and that's my life. It's not stressful. It actually is very stressful trying to actually might be more stressful trying to live up to your dreams or what you think you wanted. You know what I mean? Trying to get up there. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
We'll talk more about that towards the
Sure.
end. But what is so-called living about for new readers, and what should returning readers expect in issues 3 and 4?
All right. Well, for new readers, so-called living, and actually have two issues here, which I didn't have last time we talked. Yeah. so I so so-called living is the premise is it takes place in a world where the extraordinary is ordinary. And that's to say that it's a world like ours, but we have we live amongst vampires and werewolves and zombies, but they're not big scary monsters. They're just like us. Like anybody, you could work with werewolves and you know they're werewolves. You work with vampires, you know they're vampires. It's just we've all and us normies, us non-supernatural beings, we've all the evolution has raised us together. So life is just like how we know it, but with a bunch of monsters incorporated into the mix. And then our story basically takes place with our our character Jack gets turned into a vampire, and then he's got to learn to live with this or learn to live with his new situation, which is being a vampire. And in the beginning, you know, these things are pretty simple. He can't get into his apartment, which is issue number one, because he can't be invited in. There's nobody to invite him in, and there's a clause on his apartment complex, no vampires. So, and as we all know, if you don't for vampire rules, if you're not invited in, you can't come in. So he's homeless. So he's a homeless vampire, calls on his friends for help. His friends are a bunch of idiots, and then he gets the mob gets wind of his situation, and they're very interested, not in a good way. So that was the gist of like all the events that took place. That's not really spoilers. Like Jack turning into a vampire, that's been in all the promo things. That's kind of what pushes the thing. So that's going to happen. And all the other stuff I mentioned, you know it, but you don't know how it gets there. So it's still worth the read. It's definitely
Mm.
worth the read. So I definitely didn't spoil the experience. And so that was the story that we laid down with the first two issues. And that was the first Kickstarter. Now, for the second Kickstarter, books 3 and 4, um, we're laying the groundwork for a much bigger story. So we're going to see more of, sorry, I want to see more of the big bad that's after Jack. We're going to see more of them. They're going to get closer than ever. We're going to see the return of the our vampires our big badass vampires that we saw in the first issue, Nick and Casper. We see a return of them. They show up in they're back with a vengeance, and when they show up, they make a splash. So they come back. So we have some major returning characters, which is great because like a lot of the feedback I got was people like Nick and Casper, but they were absent from issue 2. So people were like, "Are they coming back? Was this a one-time thing?" It's like, no, they're coming back. So we introduce new characters, and the story is going to expand, and we're going to Jack's situation is going to get more serious. So he's going beyond like, oh, I have to learn to adapt. I can't walk up to the sun. Like all that kind of goofiness that he had in the first issue where he was trying, it's a dark comedy. So that kind of goofiness he was dealing with in the beginning of like, I can't go outside. I can't get into my apartment. I'm homeless. What do I do? I can't eat this. I can't do that. So there's a lot of that. A lot of that is some of it's there, not much. Now we're starting to see that there are some real nasty situations that he's going to get himself into in issues 3 and 4. So, and the action definitely takes like launches off in book 4. Like it builds up, and then book 4 just rockets up. So, and it's fun because like up until now, the comic's been very character driven, right? Mm-hmm. It's very character driven. A lot of conversation back and forth. I find the comic book reads fairly quick, and that's some of the feedback I've gotten from readers is that they find it easy to read and witty the way that the characters interact. And now when you start getting into books 3 and 4, you're going to see a lot more physicality in the characters, which is interesting. And Jack kind of confronts, or he starts the beginning of confronting the vampires who are like, what the hell? You guys like just turn into a vampire and just bail on me? Like, what's going on? So, and we get to see more of his friends. We meet some of Jack's friends in issue 2. They're a bunch of goofballs, but we see more of their goofballiness in issues 3 and 4. So yeah, it's I think I covered that. Yeah, that was that was good. Yeah.
So I mean, some of the feedback you just mentioned that you got from readers was that it was like quick and witty, and it reminds me, I guess, of the genre of like urban fantasy writing, because when you write that has to be kind of quick. Like you can't draw it out like you would in like normal high fantasy, something like it's difficult for me to read that because it takes so long. There's so much description, and it's like a lot of it can be hard to envision because it's like set in medieval times or in this world that the author built itself. Whereas in urban fantasy, I know what a city is. I know what downtown looks like. I know what, morning rush hour or after work rush hour traffic looks like. Getting food from the bodega, or, smoking out on the steps, or getting pizza at 2 a.m. I know what that looks like. So you don't have to go in super detail about that.
That's one of the
what
things.
I also liked. Oh, go ahead.
So that's one of the things that I wanted to like focus on. Like what I'm writing, I'm very conscious of. I don't want to be like an exposition machine. I don't want to have people being like, well, these are the rules for vampires. These are rules for werewolves. So the thing, I didn't go out of my way to change anything. The attitude of the characters might be a little different than you're used to, but you get that from the writing. So they don't say things like, wow, you're not the everyday vampire. I think it's too on the nose. I don't do that. So I try to use like what you said, what these things are. So I just work with what I know people know. And there's a bit of a joke in the second issue where like, Jack catches on fire. Even the little child comes by and she's like, you shouldn't be out in the daylight. He's like, yeah, I know. Like, so there's not much. So I try not to do that. I like to not take the reader for granted because I feel like some people think the readers are dumb and they try and play down to them, and I don't want to do that. So I want to respect your intelligence and be like, yeah, you'll figure, even if you don't know right away, you'll figure it out as it's written, because I'm not breaking new ground in like I'm not making new rules for anything. This is something that you can get into and being comfortable. Like I know how people interact. I can get behind these characters. This is like something I've seen in Friends. This is like something I've seen in Sopranos. Like I know what these characters are. So just kind of play with that. So play with what we have instead of just trying to make something new. And then have I find some old X-Men comics, they use a lot of exposition, and they'll just page after page and page of text just describing everything that's happening. Like, yeah, you said high fantasy, and those are even worse. Like, those novels are even worse. Like, I read them and I'm just like 2 pages in, like I can't do this. Even audiobooks, even an audiobook that goes that far, I can't. I was like, enough. I don't need to know every last wrinkle of your bed sheets. Like, I don't need to know it.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, audiobooks alone, sometimes it depends on the narrator. It's just, it can be, I tried doing audiobooks, Audible with the Dresden Files,
Mm-hmm.
and I got maybe, I don't even know how far in the first chapter before I gave it back. Because it was just so boring. It was just so, I felt like I was reading a bunch of text and it was nothing happening. So that's what it felt like for me.
I actually have this like a novel project that I kind of got going on the side that I decided to do the comic book first, get that out of the way before I go back to that. But one of the things, kind of a rule I do with myself too, is I try not to come up with names that are hard to pronounce.
Hmm.
So when I know there's a lot of fantasy, like I can't remember what fantasy what novel I was reading or listening to. And if I was reading it, it'd be so much worse because this guy was talking about it. He's like, on the eve of the Quagon, I sat amongst the precipice along the banks of the Nevacor in front of a Neva beast. And I was like, I don't know what any of what. I don't know what any of that is. Is Neva Beast? Is that like an actual beast? Is that a city? Is that like I don't know. What are you standing in front of? Like it's just these long, long, drawn out names, and I can't like I've tried to read them. I was like, am I even saying that right? Kalakamasaur Senestin. So I like my character's names are Jack, Nick, Casper, like they're Tim,
Yeah,
Marvin. They're very easy. Well, easy for North Americans, right? North American easy. I don't know what the difficulty level of that would be in like I don't know China. So because I have no idea in that way because there might be a little cultural. Obviously, there's going to be some cultural differences there, but if you read English, they're easy to follow.
yeah. I mean, in that instance, in that context, yeah, that makes sense. If you're reading, um, something about Native Americans, they don't have native names. That
Mm-hmm.
makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
in what their life is like out on the reservation or outside of the res, or like you mentioned, someone who's Chinese and they're writing it or whatever. That makes sense with having those names. But like, you're just a plain white guy with these weird names of these cities and whatever. Like I played Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, and they have these like really difficult names to pronounce. I'm like, my name is Gwen. The traditional they tried to spell it with a Q. I was like, no, it's spelled with a G, Gwen. It's just a regular Gwen. It's not hard to forget. And they still somehow forget the name, but remember Valcor. I'm like, I don't what? I think I said Velcro at one point. I'm like, I don't know your name.
Velcro of the House of Sith.
Well, Mark, at any point during the process, I guess from issues 1 and 2 into 3 and 4, it could be in between either issue. Did your creative or collaborative process change in any way versus creating the first two?
Well, yeah, the process didn't change because here's the thing. As far as the writing goes, the process didn't change because the scripts are all written for the first 8 books before I even started book 1.
Hmm.
So I'm not going in blind. I drew my roadmap of where the story was going to end. So that didn't change. But what did change is how I communicated with Marco, who's the artist. So he's I think I probably mentioned this in the first video, was Marco's in Italy. So English isn't his first language. So communications are a bit of some communication barriers. And since then, I've been using different ways to communicate with him other than just drawing it myself. If I want something specific that I don't think he's getting across, I can go to Dolly, like the AI drawing tool, and I'd be like, I need a picture. If I thought of that in the beginning, because I had a hard time getting him to draw chili fries, what chili fries were, because he has no idea. I guess they don't have them in Italy, or at
Hmm.
least it doesn't translate. So I could have just gone to AI tools and say, I need a picture of chili fries. And then they would have popped up and I'd be like, that's it. And I would have showed them, I was like, there you go. Because I tried to Google chili fries and I couldn't find a good picture of chili fries. They all looked sad. And I didn't want them to draw sad chili fries. So I've been using to communicate with them. If I need them to, if I'm trying to get an idea across and my scribbles aren't enough, then I'll try to be like, okay, man on knees, another man standing, and he's punching him in the face while he's on his knees. Like, and I use AI to generate that. I was like, excellent. And I sent it to him. I was like this, and he's obviously he redraws it. It's not, he's not like tracing or anything. It's still him. It's just to show him what I mean. Because sometimes I have to Google images like, I can't remember what it was. There's either, it's in book 3. There's either a high five or a fist bump. I can't remember what it was, but he didn't know what I meant. He didn't know what it was. Like that, me saying, oh yeah, and Tim high fives or fist bumps Jack. And I don't remember what he drew. And I was like, I'm getting the sense you don't know what I'm talking about when I tell you he fist bumps Jack. So I had to like I couldn't do it myself because he'd think that's what you do. So I was like, Google fist bump, fist bump image, and sending that to him. So the communications between me and Marco has changed a bit. And but I've also learned a little more, I guess been more confident with my ability to go in there and fix things myself, because I am an artist. If I have to adjust any small little things, that I don't have to go back to Marco. So I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. Or I've been like adjusting some of the letter treatments myself, because I wasn't like a fan of the way the letterer did it. So, but instead of going back and forth, I decided I'm just gonna do it myself. Not that anybody was doing anything wrong. It was just there's a time difference, there's a language barrier. Certain things just took longer. So as far as like me communicating with Marco, that process has changed, and I am going to be a little more careful when it comes to the editing, because there was 2 typos in the books. There was one did, it doesn't really matter. It's inconsequential. It's in the legal of issue 1, and I put a little smart ass line at the end that says something like, look at you reading the legal, but actually there was a typo and it says, look at you ready the legal. I was like, oh.
You give a smart ass.
Yeah. And there was one part that this is where it's in issue 2 where Jack says, he was supposed to say, I don't want anybody to know yet. And I think that's how actually people read it based on just the flow, but it actually comes out, I didn't want anybody to knew yet. So I was like, oh, how did that happen? I was like, how did everybody miss that? So, and I don't blame the letterer, because the letterer doesn't even speak English, because she's in Italy too. And Marco knows her, and she just copies and pastes and puts things in. But sometimes she does, like, she'll copy and paste the same thing twice, and she doesn't even realize the same thing. So I don't blame her at all. So I don't know if it was in my original script or accidentally got changed on her end. Like, I don't know if she's typing or copying and pasting, but regardless, that got through. So I'm going to be a little more careful this time around. And yeah, and I know I've definitely took lessons that I'm going to take, maybe that were too late for 3 and 4, that I'm going to take into 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. So I want to just basically how I treat characters and how they're like the exit of character, of how certain characters exit the scene or like exit the story. Like, if you remember book 1, there's a character that gets killed, and it's very unceremonious of how they got killed. But I kind of did that on purpose because I wanted to kind of play off the idea that life for them, for those vampires, doesn't really matter. It's like throwing out a piece of trash. If they kill somebody, like, man, that's how it is for them. Because I'd explained that in the book. They don't feel feelings like that no more. So that's how I presented it to the reader. But there was not many, but some people were saying, well, she gone for good, like, or like, what's she coming back? And they felt that that kind of left hanging. So I'm trying to be more aware of that, and I'm going to kind of give hints without giving things away. So when people go and they read things, they're like, oh, that was planned from the beginning, that was there. So there's some of that already, but I want to try to be a little more cautious and be more, I guess, very I want to be more aware of where a character's path is taking them, because the way I write is I throw them in a situation and I know what the character's like, and I just send them on a journey, and I don't know what that journey is as I'm writing. I'm like, okay, Jack's gonna go buy some fries, and I know at some point he's gonna get eaten by a vampire, or by a vampire. So I just write, and I was like, what would he do? I know his character, so he's an idiot. I know his girlfriend's a bit of a hard ass, so that's how I write. I was like, okay, idiot says this, hard ass says this, idiot says this, hard ass. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and I don't know what it is. I just, it's like I'm watching it in my head play through, and I'm just typing what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm trying to, I guess, get more of a path. Just put a few more dots on their path, just so
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't go astray.
Yeah. Has there been any feedback you were surprised that you got from any readers, or like that, that they
It,
liked this or they didn't like that part, and it's kind of like, really?
the the one the one that stands to mind that jumps out is actually isn't even from books 1 and 2. Not there have been for 1 and 2, but because most of the feedback has been positive for
Mm-hmm.
1 and 2. So I've had not a whole lot of complaints. A lot of people are like, "What's with the bunnies?" Or people want to see the bunnies do something else. I was like, oh, that's not the point. The bunnies can't do that. Like, because there's hints that bunnies are dangerous, and people are like, oh, you should have a bunny kind of like Monty Python, where it just rips somebody apart. You see him. I was like, well, I have a plan for the bunnies. They're not random. They're not just in there randomly. I have a plan for them. But I'm trying to tell people I have a plan for the bunnies, and they're very important, but it's so I can't, but I don't want to tell people like your idea. I don't want to do your idea because I feel like I'm not slamming down your ideas. There's a plan, and I got to go with it. And if I did what you're doing, that would be against the plan. But the thing that stands out the most, so it's been mostly positive. The thing that stands out the most that surprised me was in book 3, there's a character introduced. Now, I don't know if you read. There was a reviewer copy of book 3 in the press kit. I don't know if you got that or if you read that, but there's a character in there called Jenny. Now, I'm not going to say any more than that. There's a character named Jenny,
Yeah, I saw that.
and so a lot of my proofreaders that I gave the book to, I was like, hey, here's issue 3. Tell me, just read it. Just tell me what you think. If you see anything that stands out, or if there's anything positive, anything negative, let me know. And so I gave it to people, and I don't know if it's because most of the people I gave it to were no. You know what? I'm gonna take that back. I gave it to a bunch of people, and they were mostly women because I know mostly women. We're mostly women. Only probably 2 guys that read it, but every single woman who read it that came back said I really like Jenny, and I was like, really? I didn't expect that. And when you read book 3 and you read who Jenny is, then you'd be like, okay, yeah, all right. So, like, you might like her. Like, I like her, but I know what's gonna happen. I didn't think I did enough with her for people to be like, I like that character. But no, people are like, I love Jenny. And I was like, it's interesting. Because they read books 1, they read books 2 and 3, 4. I don't have 4 in a position where it can be read. It's being lettered right now. So I don't want to give the script out necessarily because it's just messy to read. But people went through books 1 and 2. People think the bunnies are cute, but nobody commented on any of the characters except for a few guys said I like the vampires. But as far as people that are close to me, they never say anything positive about characters specifically. They said they like the story, but those same people came back and said I like Jenny, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. So if anybody's watching this, Kickstarter's live now. If you back it, you'll find out who Jenny is and why. And see, and I want to know actually if anybody's watching this, if you back it and you read it, I want to know if you like Jenny, because then if there is a kind of an outcry for more Jenny, then I'll put more of her in there because I have plans for her, but I was kind of gonna push them down the line, but I have gaps where I could squeeze her in there. I could work her into the story. So,
well, speaking of the Kickstarter, what are some of the rewards for potential backers?
well,
Other
there's
than if they want to, squeeze in some Jenny in there.
well, yeah, so there are it's issues 3 and 4, and there's 3 covers for each book. So there's 6 covers total. So you can get an all in that has all 6 covers, which oddly enough, I didn't think this was going to be a thing. Almost just as many people bought the standard basic with the basic covers, these 2, these two books. Almost as many people bought these two books as people who bought all 6 books.
Oh, wow.
Like at one point, there was more people who bought all-ins than standards, and then standard took a bit of a jump ahead. So I call these the standard issues. Standard issues are the ones the covers are drawn by Marco Leone, the guy who does the insides. And then I have the elite covers, which are drawn by guest artists. Now, this time around, I had John Little, who's Doug Wright. The Doug Wright Award is I think it might be just a Canadian award, but it's like an animated character animation award. I have to look more into it, but it's a big deal. And he got nominated. So I was a friend of mine, and I asked him to do a cover, and he's got a very specific style, the way he is. So when he drew the cover, it's a yellow cover of like somebody's drinking back a martini with the characters just like falling into his mouth. That was John Little's cover. And then there's this pink cover, which is actually, I drew it. It's a bunch of bunnies on a pink cover. It's the whole cover is 3 colors. It's black, pink, and blue. And that's the whole cover. And the white is just the paper. But I wanted to do something that was very stylized, that was like 2 or 3 colors. And that kind of came at last minute because I had another cover that kind of fell through, didn't work out. So I was like, I need a cover. I'll just draw it myself. So I don't have time to go looking for anybody. So I drew a bunny cover, and I thought I would do something that was kind of paying homage to the Blood Bunny Colony, which is something I have. If you buy a keychain it's like a bunny keychain that I have on the Kickstarter page, you get entered in, you're automatically added to the Blood Bunny Colony. And that means for every So-Called Living Kickstarter that comes out, you get either a discount or you get a print or stickers. Like there's going to be something different. Depends on how things are going, what I can give you, but you'll always get more. You'll get the keychain, and you'll be entered. Your email will be added to the list, and you'll always get something extra with every Kickstarter. So like right now for this Kickstarter, anybody who bought the keychains the first time around, they'll get either an automatic upgrade from standard to elite, or from elite to sexpot, which I'll get in a second, or they get free stickers and free prints. So the last set of covers, which I mentioned, it's called the obligatory sexpot editions, which I had in the first one. And the kind of joke is that the running joke that if you want to have a successful comic book on Kickstarter, you have to have a sexy cover. So I was like, well, there's nothing sexy about my book, but you know what? I can do a sexy cover. So we kind of took a cosplay mentality to it, where it's like, let's take something from the book, like a character from the book or a scene from the book, and then we're going to sexify it. Just like when you go to a con and you see a girl dressed as like sexy SpongeBob or sexy Mario and Luigi. It's like, those aren't sexy characters, but somebody made them sexy. So I have like this zombie girl coming out of a pool, and the pool's full of zombies. Now that's based on the idea that in this world, zombies are kind of attracted to pools. It's kind of like it's like it's one of the rules. I don't explain. It just happens. There's all these panels, and you see zombies in the pool like this, kind of like leaves in the pool. So they're kind of a nuisance, and people have to get them out. That's one cover. And the other one is a play on cover 4. Actually, cover 4 of the standard is everybody in a fight. It's a big fight. It's a tangle of bodies. Everybody's on top of each other. And the whole cover is the main characters and a bunch of people fighting. So I thought, wouldn't it be funny for the sexpot editions that it would be all like the female staff, and they were all fighting. So because on the regular cover, it's all guys, because it's all like the bouncers and security. And there's one girl that's in that cover. She's one of the main characters that we introduced in that book. But I thought, oh, what about if it was all the female staff and they got into it? So then I got Larry Twasson, who I found him on Facebook. His art's amazing. He does traditional like pencil to paper, and then he inks traditional. He doesn't do digital. And then he sends me the actual physical copy, which is awesome. And he scans it for me. So he sends me the scan, and then I send that to my colorist, and they separate it and they color. So Larry Twasson this time around did both sexpot covers, the zombie girl coming out of the pool and the big fight, the big scrap of all the girls kind of like just intertwined. And there's no nudity, just so you know. Like I had people asking for like nude covers, and I was like, that's pushing it a little farther than it fits. I have no problem with nudity or sexy things, but that's pushing it a little farther than what the license, like what So-Called Living is about, right? Like having a cover with with a tag right on it that says obligatory sexpot edition is very much calling out why we're doing it. We're not trying to be slick. We're being like, this is why we're doing it, because it's obligatory. You need to have it. So and that fits with the humor of the series. But when if there's all out like nudity and just total like frontal, it doesn't fit. It would go against the grain. I wouldn't feel right doing it for the license, so I'm just not going to do it because that's not the direction of this story. Like I said again, I have nothing against sexy things. I love sexy things, but that's not this story. Everything has its place.
Yeah.
So I have those 3 tiers, and I also have catch-up tiers. So if anybody wants Soka Living issues 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can get all of them in one pack, and you'll get a discount. So I knock $5 off if you get all 4. So you can get all of them in whatever cover set you want. So you can get them all of them in standard, all in elite, or all in the obligatory Sexpot editions. So I have that. And I have the keychain again, the bunny keychain. So if you want to be a member of the Blood Bunny Colony and get discounts on future ones, get the keychain, and then you're automatically entered. So that's how that works.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Kickstarter now. What I like about the covers immediately is John Little's the yellow one. It does remind me of like a comic strip and just that one panel of it.
Mhm.
It reminds me of that, which I like. Yours reminds me of like a coloring book, which
Yeah.
I like coloring books. I just like how it's the cutout of just the white up against that bright, I guess what was it, like a fuchsia or something with the
It's
blue?
yeah, because it's got like that intense pink background,
Yeah.
but and it's got that really bright blue. I don't know what you call it because I'm curious what's gonna come like in print. So I'm gonna might have to fudge that a bit because things look great until you print them, right? And then you print them, it comes out dark. It's like so
Uh-huh.
we'll see. So I hope my printer can give me a heads up and being like, when I give it to them, I'm gonna be like, do these colors work? Is there anything I need to do on my end to make them come out that blue or that pink?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to call the pink aggressive salmon. Aggressive salmon.
Aggressive
So
salmon.
aggressive salmon. So for any of the men out there who are like, I'm not going to buy a pink book because for whatever reason, consider it aggressive salmon.
Aggressive salmon. And then I like the zombie one too. I mean, zombies in a pool. I didn't think they would have the brain power left over to know how to swim,
Oh
and
yeah,
but then
they
when you
don't.
describe it as them in like leaves in the
Yeah,
pool, then yeah, that makes sense because they're kind of just like aimlessly bumping into each other, kind of like
yeah.
a wave pool almost.
So it's basically like they walk in like they're just stuck there because they can't
Uh-huh.
swim, can't get out. So there's like it's in the very first book. In the very first book, there's this joke. This is one panel where Jack is talking about his apartment, and he's like, and there's a pool, and it cuts the pool, and it's a zombie in the water, and Nick, that's the vampire. He's like a regular lap of luxury. He makes the joke, and then in book 3, he actually goes to um, Tim's place, who's a friend of his, and Tim's trying to sell him on the place. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's great, blah 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 blah. There's the pool," and then it cuts to the pool, and it's like looks like a pool like nobody's been in a while. It's just got a bunch of zombies with it like in the water, and Jack makes the comment. It's like, "Yeah, there's always a pool." It's basically like there's always a pool, nobody uses it, just gets neglected. And that funny, here's a funny fact. That whole like shitty pool in the apartment thing came from Karate Kid. Like if
Oh.
you ever watched Karate Kid, like the original Karate Kid,
Uh-huh.
he goes to the apartment complex he lives in. That's what Jack's apartment complex was based on. So if you see the front of the building when you see Jack's, it's based on the Karate Kids, like where Danielson moved with his mom. That's what it's
Uh-huh.
based on. And there's a scene when he walks in, he's like, so they make a comment about the pool. I can't remember what they said because the pool's like all empty, like it just like a trashy pool, nobody uses it. So I thought, oh, wouldn't it be funny if like I'll put water in this one, but I was like, I'll make the pool trashy, and then every apartment from then on it just have like just trashy pools that nobody uses, so they're unkept, and the zombies wandered in there and they fell in. So zombies are like the sludge or the leaves that you're like people just have to deal with pools. So when you think of
Mm.
like pools are such a headache to upkeep in this world, even more so because zombies are always falling in them. So
Hilarious. Um, Mark, will you be, I mean, well, the year's coming to a close, but are you going to be at any cons this year?
well, I've been to like I'm in Canada, so
Uh-huh.
I've been to some cons here, and the book's done well. But the thing with cons is a lot of it, most of the costs like the book does well than most indie books at the cons from what I've seen.
Hmm.
As in like where I go, unless you're a well-known artist, it's kind of hit and miss. So, but we've done fairly well, and we've cleared our table every time and made a little. But once you take the table away, you're like, that's to sell a lot of books to just clear the table, right?
Hmm.
So I'm trying to go to like some smaller cons where it's like $75 a table or something like that. So
Yeah.
because it's great to get it out. And a lot of these cons are like, yeah, we're supporting indie. Come and we have our own section. So yeah, if you really want to support us, you give us the table for free so we get our stuff out there, or give us the table
Yeah.
for like $25. Like something, and charge the pros, charge the vendors. But it's the opposite. The pros, the guys who have the money to make it, they invite in for free. But I get it, because you invite the pros in for free to attract customers. Like, I get the business end of it, I get it, but it's like you're not really helping the indie people when you're gouging them for tables. And then you ask people like, hey, how'd you do? He's like, I did really well, although once you deduct the table, I didn't do so well. So I'm getting to learn that, but I knew that right off the bat. So I haven't applied to like Fan Expo, which is like 120, 130,000 people here in Toronto. And I haven't gone to those because I think those are like $650 a table. That's Canadian, mind you. So that's like $50 American. But the those cons, like I'm worried. It was like, I don't know if I want to spend that much and just not make it back, or just make it. Like, that's a lot of products to clear
Yeah.
$650.
So, I mean, I don't know if I told you this the last time, but I try to give people advice of like sharing tables and
I'm trying. Based on your advice, I bought table covers. You showed me a table cover.
oh, okay.
So I bought the same table covers you showed me. And I have taken your advice, and I've tried to share a table, but everybody, funny enough, everybody that I do know that's getting into comics, they already have their artists that already have a background of followers on Instagram. They weren't necessarily comic book artists, they were just artists, and
Hmm.
they have a huge following. So they broke into comics, and all of a sudden they're clearing 95,000 on the Kickstarter. Like my buddy Derek, his Kickstarter just finished, and he got like he like cleared 95,000. Again, that's American, so I don't know what that translates. Sorry, that's Canadian. I don't know what that translates to American. But like, that's great for him, like awesome for him, because he put like over 10 years into building a following. So those guys don't want to share a table with me. So I'm trying to meet people that's like, hey, you're like me, we're new, want to share a table. But most of the people I've met online are in the States. So
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to meet more people that are Canadian based, and I'm trying to get into the indie focused groups. But around Toronto, there's a wait list for next year. So
Uh-huh.
it's so hard to get in. So I'm trying. I've
Yeah.
taken all the tips I've picked up.
Let me see what his name. He's in Toronto. His name he's a guy that I've interviewed a couple of times. His name is Ari Gross. He's in Toronto. I think he's in Toronto. College Street. Does that sound
Yep.
familiar? College,
Yep.
yeah, College
Yep.
Street. So he has his College Street Comics. Um, and he has a bunch of different comics. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he did mention it when I interviewed him, but that was a while ago.
I wrote that down.
So he doesn't really get on social media as often as he should, which I've
Mhm.
told him to. But I mean, he probably has his email available, and I know he has a website. So if you want to look him up and see what he's all about, maybe you guys probably sometime next year, see what he's up to and want to share a table or something like that, maybe you can, or if you guys wanted to go somewhere in the States, share a table. Um, I haven't been to a lot of cons, but I've tabled enough that like I could give some advice. I try to. So I think he's the only. I think Ari's the only person. Is he the only person I know in Toronto? I think no, it's somebody else. But his name escapes me right now. Crap. His name's it's Adrian something. I forgot what it was. Once I get the name, I'll send it to you. But he's in there as well. So Mark, where can people find you online?
Well, you can go to soholiving.com.
Uh-huh.
Although I'll give you a heads up, that site is currently being worked on. My lovely wife, who is not a web designer, is doing her best to put a website together, and so it's got it's not the most up to date, but it does have a link to our Kickstarter, which is currently live. So if, that's the best way right now to learn about anything about the comic book is just go to Kickstarter and look up So-Called Living. We've got a sizzle reel, we got tons of information, we got all the cover art, we got some sample pages. So yeah, so so-calledliving.com. That'll guide you to where you need to be.
Sweet. And my final question with you, Mark, is with everything that you do as a creator with your hands in many pots, how do you manage your mental well-being outside of your multiple endeavors?
Poorly. I think poorly is the answer. Cause I gotta admit, I've recently I've had moments where I'm like, I think I'm gonna break down. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
if I can keep doing this. And it's because this question, I've heard this question come up in other interviews and live interviews at Fan Expo and people talking about this when I sit down on panels. And everybody always has an answer. They're like, yeah, it's important to do this and that and A and B, because everybody's always come out of it. But I'm not
Mhm.
out of it. I'm in it. Like I'm so in it. I've got like I work in the video game industry. So from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, I'm I'm working for video game companies, and I'm after that I'm also consulting for another video game company, which is like a few hours a month, but I'm also doing that. On top of that, I have a YouTube channel, Board Game Coffee, where I'm doing board games, and I was actually comic book related. Invincible, the card game. I'm actually doing a how to play for this, and Skybound sent me that. So that's a project that's like it's a rush timeline. I got to get that done by the 8th. So I'm stressing because all these timelines, and I've got this my day job taking up my day. So I got to work during the day, so I can only do it at night. I have a toddler that's 3. I like to spend time with him, but I don't even get time to spend time with my toddler. Got a
Mhm.
Kickstarter that's happening. I've got like scripts that I got to write, that I got to tidy up for the next one. And then because of like Marco being in Italy, my artist, when I talk to him, it's a lot of work, a lot of back and forth, and it's just more time just crunching down. I mean, it's starting to feel like not not just a weight, but then also a guilt of like I want to be with my family. I
Mhm.
want to be with my like I love my son. Like I'd let the world burn to be with him, right? Like so I want to be with him. But right now the stress is just it's
Mhm.
intense. Like this is not it's not a weak person's game. You know what I mean? If you
Yeah.
really want to get into it and you want to do everything that you want to do, it's it's taxing and it's not for everybody. So when people come up to me and they ask me for advice of like what should you do, my advice would be like don't take on too much. It's easy to take on too much,
Yeah.
and also don't if you really want to do something but you're not doing anything, then you don't really want to do it. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I've had people come up to me and they talk to me like, "Oh, I want to do this comic book." I was like, "Oh, great. Have you started?" No. Okay. How long have you wanted to do this? Well, like last few years. Last few years, you still haven't done anything. I don't know if you want it that bad.
Mhm.
Because if you want it, just do it. Just like start. Like I wrote the scripts for So-Called Living. I had no artist. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I did as much as I possibly could. Right. I started the YouTube channel. I just did. I just went in, started. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody in the comic book industry. I just did. Now, so I have a lot of good advice on how to get into these things, but I have no advice on how to deal with the repercussions of the mental stress and that it that comes from it. So like I don't have good advice. All I can say is like I'm trying to pull back, so I've said no to a lot of projects. Like this is my last how to play that I'm doing this year. I have I think a playthrough I got to do and a review. And other than that, I've told people like, no, I need time because I'm like, I don't get time to do things that I love myself. I don't really get time to play video games unless I have like 20 minutes in bed on my Steam Deck. I don't get to read comic books anymore because I'll read an issue maybe or half an issue and fall asleep, or I'm working so late that I go to bed and I just pass out. So it's I've basically given up my life for my dream, which then you got to think, I was like, is it really your dream? Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like your dream was like you wanted your cake and you wanted to eat it too, but it's like I'm just making cake. And I can't get a bite. I'm just
Yeah.
making cake. So anyways, that's I don't know if that's the answer you wanted to
No,
hear, but
no, no.
how I deal with it is poorly.
Yeah, it's an authentic answer. I mean, I've been doing this for about 5 years, almost 6 now, and how I manage it changes every couple of months. Because it worked for these 3 or 4 months, but it's not working now. So now I have to make the adjustments and, learning. I just made a calendar. I was like, that helps me out with scheduling. That cuts out like maybe an hour of my time, hour of having to do it. So you all just do it yourselves. And, you know, I'm learning that to only do two of the creative things at once. So it's the podcast and then the video games, right? So now I'm in the last two interviews of pretty much of the year. So then, because I'm an actor as well, and then
Mm,
I just got cast yesterday in something that was last minute. So I'm
that's
gonna have
exciting.
to put this on the back burner because we're gonna start rehearsals in like a week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was surprising. And plus, I got the email like 4 o'clock this morning because I have a full-time job, two jobs. I have a full-time job and a part-time job. So I have to get up at 3 in the morning for work. And then the other one is I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. So that's actually kind of like my break from all of this, which is
Mm,
nice. But like I said, I have to do two things at once. And then eventually I'll stop with the video games and focus more on the writing and trying to get that finished. And you know, it's crazy. Just like I said, it changes because I know in like 3 or 4 months this is not going to work anymore. I'm gonna have to change it again. So it's just constantly making these adjustments. And this is coming from someone who's single and doesn't have any children. You're married with
mm.
a toddler, so and you've got to, I'm pretty sure you get paid to do a lot of your
Yeah,
stuff. I'm still
yeah,
in
I
the
do.
early stages of just doing it for the hell of it. So, you know. It's a lot.
Yeah, and that you use the pay as like, oh, it's worth it because I'm getting paid now. It'd be easy. And I used to tell myself it'd be easier if I wasn't getting paid. I could just say no. But it was
Hmm.
like it wasn't, because when I wasn't getting paid, I was just working myself off because like you're trying to make a name for yourself. You're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to put
Yeah.
things out there, right? So you work just as hard because if you're like dedicated, then you're just gonna put in the work, and that's just gonna at some point it's like it like eats you alive. And but there are positives of it, but I gotta learn. It's important to learn how to deal with that, and I know it's important to learn how to deal with it because I'm trying to learn. And what I try to do, I'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna take the day off and I'll take the weekend off or whatever, and let's go watch a movie, or let's go play in the park, or let's go whatever. But while I'm doing that, I can't help but think it's like I'm gonna get fall so behind schedule, and that just like it just compounds stress. So it's like you at there's moments where those times I take off, it's like, oh, it feels good to be doing this. But
Hmm.
then in the back of my head, I'm like, I got a deadline I got to get done. So it's like, I'll do this today, but then I got to stay up till like 2 in the morning to work on this, wake up at 7 in the morning, stay up till 2 in the morning and to get this done. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I have those moments too where I'm like, shit, I gotta get up. I gotta go to bed because I gotta get up at 3 in the morning and do this, or, I gotta do this, memorize these lines for this or whatever. But, I got invited to Comic-Con. I wasn't actually gonna go that we have here in Baltimore, but one of the people that I interviewed multiple times, his name is Jesse Kepler, and he lives in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. um, that hasn't been affected by any of the floods, thankfully. Not as much, I should say. But he came up here and he invited me and I went and I normally don't like going down there because there's so many people, but I'm
Mm.
glad I went and caught up with him and we spoke with some people that I interviewed before. I connected him with those people and we all went out to eat and it was nice. And yeah, I'm still stressed about I have to go to work tomorrow or that I have to do this or whatever, but it was nice for a couple of hours just to be out of that for a little bit. So I like I said, I would encourage you to just even if it's maybe like an hour or two of just getting out of it for a little bit because that energy you're putting into worrying about it, you could be putting into just playing with your kid or, watching TV or like mindless reality TV. I don't know if you're into that or not, but you know, that you can put that energy into that just for a little bit before you go back into the deep end.
I got into a few reruns of Hell's Kitchen there for a bit. I went to season one.
Uh-huh.
I watched the first two seasons, and I just like listening to you yell at people. So I got into that for a bit. I'm not much of a chef myself, but I do like a good tantrum.
Mhm. All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk
No,
about before
other
we
than like, whoever's watching this, if you want to check out SoCo Living, you'll get it right now. Right now. Just go to Kickstarter right now and just like back. And my shipping is one of the cheapest shippings. Like I thought I did a really good job. I'll pat myself on the back for this. I did a really good job trying to find cheap shipping, and I didn't think much of it until I started backing comic books from the States to bring to here. And shipping for one book was like $28. I was like, it's more than the book. Where
Yeah.
even if you buy the all-in package with 6 books, anywhere in the States, it's $12 Canadian. So that's like $10 or $8, whatever. It's like
Yeah, something like that.
10 or $8 for you guys. So we've done a really good job in, because some people I know that don't back books on Kickstarter because they say shipping's too much. That's the cheapest I could possibly do. And in some cases, depending where you live, I do eat the cost of that a bit. But I wanted to just get it out there. So
Mhm.
that's the last thing. That's so-called living. There you go. That's the last thing I wanted to say.
All right. Well, thank you again to writer and creator Mark Maia for joining us here today to promote issues 3 and 4 of his comic series So-Called Living, now on Kickstarter until October 31st. All of Mark's socials and website will be listed in this episode's details alongside the Kickstarter link for those who are interested. Again, I'm KS Garner, and you've been listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Thank you.